It was supposed to be a fresh start. After 3 grueling years of surviving in a loveless relationship and a draining job in Seattle, Emily Ramos packed everything she owned into her aging Honda Civic and drove south to Los Angeles. The city shimmered with promises: sunlight, freedom, a new art gallery internship, and maybe, just maybe, peace. She found the apartment by pure chance. Nestled between a shuttered antique store and a taco stand in Koreatown, the building was old, boxy, and beige, with cracked stucco walls and rusting window frames. The sign in front read, "Now leasing, ask for Unit 9B." 9B. She remembered the number clearly because the property manager, an unusually quiet woman named Miss On, didn't ask for a background check or credit report, just first month's rent in cash. Emily, desperate and grateful, signed the lease on the spot. The unit was small but neat: hardwood floors, a tiny kitchen, and a sliding door leading to a narrow balcony overlooking a dark alley. The previous tenant had left a few items behind: an antique mirror nailed to the bedroom wall, a dusty black telephone on a side table, and a faded welcome mat that read, "See you soon." The first night felt fine, uneventful. Emily unpacked, ordered Thai food, and fell asleep watching reruns of The Office on her laptop. But something woke her at 3:13 a.m. It wasn't loud. In fact, it was barely audible. Just a soft creaking sound, as if someone was shifting their weight in the hallway outside. Her eyes shot open. She listened. Nothing. She chalked it up to the building settling, the usual creaks and groans of an old structure. But when she got up to check the peephole, there was no one there. Only darkness. The hallway light was out. By morning, the incident had faded into a blur. Emily made coffee, checked her email, and headed to her first day at the gallery. The day went smoothly, though she couldn't shake the image of that hallway, the way it seemed, thicker than it should have, like the shadows weren't just darkness, but layers. When she returned that evening, the hallway light was still out, and the welcome mat said, "Don't look back." Emily froze. She stared at it for a full minute. Had she read it wrong the first time? Maybe her mind was just playing tricks on her after the long drive and first day jitters. Still, she took a picture with her phone, just to be sure. That night, she dreamt of water. Black, still water pooling in her apartment, inching up her legs as she stood frozen in the living room. And behind her, just beyond her peripheral vision, someone whispering. Something about 9B. Emily awoke with a jolt, her sheets damp with sweat. It was still dark outside and the apartment was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. The dream had left her heart pounding. Something about the water, and that voice behind her whispering, "You shouldn't have come here." She checked her phone. 3:13 a.m. again. Trying to shake it off, she got up, poured a glass of water, and walked to the living room. That's when she noticed the phone. The old black rotary phone that had come with the apartment, something she had mentally dismissed as just quirky decor, was sitting silently on the table. Except now it was off the hook. She stood staring at it, the receiver hanging loosely by its cord. Had it been like that before? She couldn't remember. Cautiously, she picked it up and returned it to the cradle. The phone clicked softly into place. Then, as if on cue, it rang. Just once. One shrill, piercing ring that echoed through the apartment. Emily dropped the receiver. Her breath caught in her throat. She waited for another ring. Nothing. The silence returned, thicker than before. She backed away from the phone, heart racing, and turned every light in the apartment on. She checked the doors, locked, windows, shut. Balcony, empty. Still shaken, she tried to sleep with the bedroom light on. But just before she drifted off, she heard again, "Kriak," coming from the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps like someone pacing in front of her door. She crept to the peephole. This time the hallway light flickered, barely working, but enough for her to see something. Not someone. A shape, tall and still, almost like a shadow standing upright, watching her door. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. Emily blinked, and it was gone. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, everything seemed normal again. The mat read, "Welcome," like it originally had. The phone sat quietly, as though it had never rung. She checked the picture she had taken the day before, the one with the mat saying, "Don't look back." It was gone, replaced by a blurry image of her shoes. She didn't remember taking that. At work, she tried to mention it to her coworker, Rachel, but stopped halfway. How do you explain something that sounds like a haunting without sounding insane? That night, she left the lights on again. She turned the phone to face the wall, and when she checked the hallway, it was empty. But at exactly 3:13 a.m., the phone rang once more. Just once. Emily barely made it through the next day. She walked around the gallery like a ghost herself, distracted and pale, unable to shake the sensation that she was being watched, even in broad daylight. Every time she glanced at her phone, it was as if the screen dimmed for a heartbeat longer than it should. Her reflection in the darkened glass seemed delayed. Back at the apartment that evening, she stood in the bedroom, staring at the large antique mirror bolted to the wall. She hadn't paid much attention to it before. It had seemed just another leftover from the previous tenant, like the cursed phone. But now something about it bothered her. The glass looked warped, almost liquid, like it was breathing. She moved closer, inspecting the frame. Carved into the wood, so faint it was almost invisible, were strange symbols, loops and slashes that seemed more like scratches than writing. When she leaned in, she saw something else. Fingerprints on the inside. She recoiled. Her first instinct was to cover the mirror, but the thing was fixed so tightly to the wall, it would take tools she didn't have to remove it. She grabbed a blanket and draped it over the frame, breathing a little easier. That night, she forced herself to stay awake past 3:13. She sat in the living room with her laptop, headphones on, watching an old horror film to ironically distract her from real horror. It worked, until she heard a thump from the bedroom. A slow, heavy thump, like something falling or landing. She stood up, every muscle stiff with dread. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, though she was sure she'd closed it. The lights were flickering now. Her heart pounded as she crept forward and pushed the door open. Dum, the blanket had slipped off the mirror, and in the glass she saw herself standing. Only she wasn't moving. Her real body was trembling, heart racing, feet shifting with every anxious step. But the reflection was perfectly still, arms at her side, eyes wide open, and smiling. Emily screamed and flipped the light switch. The reflection blinked, suddenly real again, mimicking her movements. She backed out of the room, slammed the door, and slept on the couch with every light in the apartment blazing. In the morning, she found a note taped to the mirror, one she hadn't written. It said, "You see me now." Emily didn't go to work that day. She spent the morning in a nearby cafe, hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Every time someone walked in, she flinched. She kept checking her phone, but no messages came, no missed calls, and yet the silence felt loud, too loud. By noon, she gathered the courage to return to her apartment. The door was just as she left it, deadbolt secure, chain fastened. But the moment she stepped inside, she knew something was off. It was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the unnatural, padded silence that made her ears strain. Even the usual city sounds, the buzz of traffic, the distant chatter of pedestrians, were gone. She moved cautiously, checking each room. Then she heard it, a faint voice, whispering. She stopped cold. The sound was coming from the vent above her kitchen. It was small and square, covered with a rusty grill. She climbed onto the counter, heart racing, and leaned close. "Emily," the voice hissed, barely audible, like wind trapped in a pipe. "Why did you take my place?" She recoiled and nearly fell off the counter. No, she must be hallucinating. Maybe the lack of sleep, the stress, maybe she was finally cracking. She backed away and turned on every appliance she could. The fan, the TV, music on her phone. anything to drown out that voice. It didn't help. That night, the phone didn't ring. It was worse. At exactly 3:13 a.m., Emily was awake in bed, unable to sleep, eyes fixed on the covered mirror. Suddenly, the vent began to rattle. Slow at first, like metal shifting under pressure, then harder, more frantic, like something was crawling through it. She grabbed her phone, started recording. The sound grew louder, closer. Thump. It landed in the hallway outside her room. She held her breath. Slow footsteps began pacing just beyond her closed door. Then a whisper. "Let me in." Emily bolted out of bed, ran to the door, and shoved a chair under the handle. She stood frozen, waiting. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then the phone rang. One sharp, shrieking ring that made her scream. She didn't answer it, couldn't. Instead, she picked it up and threw it across the room. It shattered against the floor. But the sound kept ringing. Not from the phone anymore. From the vent. Emily didn't remember falling asleep, but when she woke up, the phone was back on the table. Whole, unscratched, exactly where it had always been. No cracks, no damage, as if she had never touched it. That terrified her more than the ringing itself. She went online, searching desperately for any mention of Room 9B and reviews, tenant forums, Reddit threads, anything. But the building barely had a digital footprint. No complaints, no history, no record of past residents. It was like it didn't exist. Until she found one comment on a 2-year-old forum titled LA Apartment Nightmares. User red_eyes89. Avoid room 9B on Wilshire. Just trust me. If you're already in, don't look in the mirror. And whatever you do, don't answer the phone. Emily's breath caught. She clicked on the profile, but it had been deleted. Still, she saved a screenshot and decided to go straight to the property manager. But Miss An wasn't in her office. The door was shut, the window dark. Emily knocked for nearly 10 minutes. No answer. She tried calling the number on the lease. Disconnected. Out of options, she turned to Rachel at work. Over lunch, she finally blurted it all out. The mirror, the phone, the vent, the whispering. To her surprise, Rachel didn't laugh. Instead, she leaned in and asked, "What's your apartment number?" 9B. Rachel paled. "You're kidding." Emily shook her head. "Why?" Rachel hesitated. "I had a friend, Sophie, who used to live in that building. 2 years ago. She disappeared, just vanished. Her lease was never canceled, but when her parents came looking, everything in her unit was gone, like she never moved in." Emily's mouth went dry. "Was her apartment?" 9B, Rachel confirmed, voice low. "She used to tell me about strange dreams. Water in the apartment. Voices. She even said something about a mirror that didn't match her reflection." Emily could barely breathe. "What happened to her?" "No one knows," Rachel said. "They just found her keys and phone in the alley behind the building, but she was never seen again." That night, Emily stared at the mirror long and hard. She took a permanent marker and wrote across the glass, "Who are you?" She waited. At 3:13 a.m., she woke up, compelled to check the mirror again. The message was gone. And in its place, written in something that looked like ash, "I'm you." Emily could no longer pretend her apartment was just haunted. It was changing her. Each night, she felt her grip on reality slip a little more. Her face in the mirror looked unfamiliar now, even in daylight. Her smile too wide, her eyes too tired. And sometimes, they blinked out of sync. She started avoiding her reflection altogether. Still, she couldn't bring herself to leave. Something about room 9B held her. The building pressed in on her like it was alive, watching, waiting, and the nights were getting longer. On the 6th night, it began with a dripping sound, steady, rhythmic. She followed it from the kitchen to the bathroom. There, she found the tub half filled with water. Black water. She hadn't turned the faucet on. In fact, she hadn't used the tub at all since moving in. But now the water was brimming just under the edge. Thick, dark, and motionless. It smelled like earth, like something that had been buried. Her breath fogged the mirror above the sink. She wiped it with her sleeve and froze. Behind her reflection, in the tub, was a figure, soaking wet, pale, long black hair plastered across its face, not moving, just sitting in the water, as if waiting to be noticed. She spun around. The tub was empty, but the water level had risen. Emily ran out of the bathroom and slammed the door. Her heart thundered in her chest. She backed away slowly, then turned toward the mirror in the bedroom, only to find a wet handprint on the glass. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, hands trembling. 911, what's your emergency? There's something in my apartment, Emily whispered. Someone in the bathtub. I think I'm losing it. What's your address? The operator asked calmly. Emily gave it. Silence. Hello? She asked. Then the operator whispered, You shouldn't have called. The line went dead. Emily dropped the phone. That's when she heard it again. The drip, drip, drip. But this time it wasn't coming from the tub. It was coming from inside the mirror. Black water began to leak from the bottom edge of the glass, forming a dark puddle on the bedroom floor. In it, a reflection began to take shape. Not hers. Emily stared at the puddle as it spread across the wooden floor, too thick to be water, too dark to reflect anything clearly. Except that face. Not her own. It stared up at her, eyes wide, mouth slightly open as if gasping for air beneath the surface. The features were familiar, almost identical to Emily's, but twisted, off, like a bad copy. She backed away slowly, heart slamming in her chest. Then the eyes in the puddle moved. They tracked her. She ran to the kitchen and grabbed the heaviest towel she could find, dropping it onto the floor to soak up the water. But when she looked again, the floor was dry. Bone dry. The towel was folded neatly on the counter, untouched. Emily stumbled back, clutching the edge of the sink. Her breath was shallow. Her skin felt cold. She looked up at the kitchen window and saw her reflection blink before she did. That night, she barricaded the bathroom with furniture and turned the mirror to face the wall. She didn't care about the damage anymore. She just wanted it to stop. But at 3:13 a.m., she awoke standing in front of it. She didn't remember getting up. Her hands were pressed against the glass. Her breath fogged the surface. She was whispering something. She leaned closer and heard herself repeat, "Let me out. Let me out. Let me out." She pulled her hands back and screamed, stumbling away. The figure inside the mirror remained, palms still flat against the glass. It smiled at her smile but wrong, hungrier, and its lips moved, silently mouthing the words, "You're almost ready." The next morning, she found her front door wide open. On the floor just beyond the threshold sat the rotary phone, unplugged, shattered, and ringing. Emily screamed and slammed the door shut. Then she turned and came face to face with Miss An. The property manager stood motionless in her living room. Her eyes were blank, her skin grayish. She held something in her hand, an old frayed folder labeled Tenant File 9B. Without speaking, she opened it. Inside was a photo, Emily's photo, and below it, a note scrawled in red ink. Cycle incomplete, integration pending. Emily reached for the folder, but Miss An vanished before her fingers touched it, just blinked out of existence, leaving only the folder behind. It was empty, except for one torn scrap of paper that read, "One always stays behind." Emily no longer trusted mirrors. She covered every reflective surface in the apartment, glass frames, silverware, even her phone screen. But no matter how many she hid, something always managed to find her. A flicker in the microwave door, a shimmer in the TV's black screen. Even the window at night sometimes looked back before she looked into it. That morning, she found muddy footprints leading from the mirror in the bedroom to her bed. The covers were turned down like someone had crawled in beside her. She hadn't slept. All day, she heard whispers in the vents, behind the walls, inside the plumbing. A woman's voice, sometimes pleading, sometimes mocking, sometimes crying in a way that made her eyes sting and her bones ache. She couldn't keep living like this, so she packed a bag and left, fleeing the building, the street, the block. She walked without a plan, just putting distance between her and 9B. She didn't stop until her feet hurt and her phone buzzed with a low battery warning. She called Rachel. Within an hour, she was at Rachel's apartment across town, curled up on her friend's couch with a blanket and a hot drink. "I'm losing my mind," Emily whispered. Rachel placed a hand on her arm. "You're not. I believe you." Emily broke down crying. It was the first time in days she felt safe, human, real. But then she saw it. In the darkened TV screen across the room, her reflection stared back, not crying, not blinking, just watching. She froze. "Rachel," she said slowly, "do you have a mirror in the bathroom?" Rachel frowned. "Yeah, why?" "I need to check something." In the bathroom, Emily stood in front of the mirror. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hair a mess, her skin pale. But something was off. Her reflection seemed delayed, half a second behind. Then slowly, its mouth moved. "You left me behind." She stumbled back and bolted from the room. "I have to go," she told Rachel, grabbing her coat. "What? You just got here." "I can't stay. It's following me. It's everywhere." Rachel stepped toward her. "Emily, slow down. What's following you?" Emily hesitated, then whispered, "Me." She ran out the door and into the night. But as she turned the corner, her phone buzzed. A message from her own number. "Room 9B misses you." And below it, a photo. A photo of her sleeping. In her bed. Right now. Emily returned to room 9B just before dawn. She didn't want to, but whatever this thing was, it wouldn't let her go. Not while a part of her was still inside. Not while her reflection still moved when she didn't. The apartment greeted her like it had been waiting. The air was heavy, wet. The walls seemed darker. Every light she flicked on dimmed, humming like it was alive. Something had changed. She moved through each room slowly, whispering her own name under her breath like a prayer. She didn't know why. It just felt necessary, like an anchor. When she reached the bedroom, the mirror was gone. In its place was a hole in the wall, tall, narrow, like a door. Inside, darkness. Not just the absence of light, but the kind that swallowed sound, breath, thought. And from the depth of that void, she heard it. Her own voice. "Emily, please, I'm still here." She should have run. Instead, she stepped through. The air changed immediately. Cold, thick, pulsing like a heartbeat. The space was narrow, the walls damp. She ran her hands along them as she descended a spiral staircase she hadn't seen until she was already walking down it. Each step echoed like it led further beneath the world. The deeper she went, the more she heard. The whispers of tenants long gone, names scratched into the concrete walls, sobbing behind sealed doors. She passed rooms with rusted numbers, 7B, 5C, 3A. Each door warped, twisted, humming with pressure like something inside was trying to push out. Then she saw it. Room 9B again, but this time underground. The door stood ajar, light flickering from within. She stepped inside. It was a perfect replica of her apartment, but wrong. Everything was reversed as if mirrored. The furniture faced the wrong way. Her paintings were smeared like melting wax. And on the floor in the bedroom was herself, curled up, shaking, whimpering. Emily approached slowly and the figure looked up. It was her, but her face was twisted in terror. "You're not me," the other Emily whispered. "You're it. You're what came out when I answered the phone." "I didn't," Emily started, but then the girl screamed, pointing behind her. Emily turned and saw her reflection step through the mirror, no longer confined to glass. It moved in silence, body flowing like water, eyes hollow but grinning. The reflection lunged. Darkness consumed the room. And then Emily was back, standing in her apartment, alone. Everything was normal, except when she looked in the mirror, her reflection smiled. Before she did. Emily avoided mirrors for the next 2 days. She taped paper over every glass surface, covered her phone screen with duct tape, refused to look into windows. She knew it was still watching, still there. But if she didn't see it, maybe it couldn't touch her. But deep down, she could feel something else. A shift. She no longer felt alone in her own skin. Sometimes her hands moved without meaning to, twitching, reaching for things she didn't need. She would speak and the voice wouldn't sound quite like hers. She began to forget words she'd known her whole life. At work, Rachel asked if she was okay. Emily answered yes without blinking, but couldn't remember saying it. That night she dreamed of the underground room, 9B. Only this time, she was the one on the floor, screaming as her reflection climbed into her body. And the worst part? She woke up with dirt under her fingernails, like she'd been digging, like she'd climbed out of something. Desperate, she called the old building inspector's office listed on her lease. After hours of hold music and transfers, an older man finally answered. When she gave her address, there was silence. "You said 9B?" he asked slowly. "Yes." "You need to leave," he said. "That unit was condemned 30 years ago after a tenant died. They sealed it, said it was structurally unstable. But it wasn't that." "What was it?" "Something happened in the mirror," he whispered. "A rupture. It lets something through. Something that wants to be real." Emily's voice cracked. "Why me?" "Because it needs a host," he said. "And once it's seen you, once you've seen yourself, it's already started." The line went dead. That night, Emily decided to confront the mirror once and for all. She peeled the tape away slowly, revealing her reflection. It smiled, then lifted a hand and knocked on the inside of the glass. 3 sharp knocks. Knock, knock, knock. And in the silence that followed, Emily whispered, "What do you want?" The reflection's mouth moved, her voice echoing from behind the glass. "To trade places." And then with a sudden crack, a spiderweb fracture ran across the surface of the mirror, like it was breaking open from the inside. The cracks spread like veins across the mirror, each splinter shimmering with something deeper than silver. Emily stared as her reflection twisted and warped, no longer bound by physics or light. It moved freely now, staring, grinning, waiting. She backed away, but the mirror pulled at her, not physically, but with something deeper, an invitation, a tether. Her ears rang, her vision tunneled. The air around her grew cold, damp, humming with that familiar whisper. Almost done, almost home. The lights in her apartment flickered and went dark. And in the mirror, her reflection stepped forward. One leg, then the other. It moved like liquid shadow, dripping glass and smoke, but with her face, perfectly hers. It reached out, and as it touched the inside surface, the glass rippled like water. Emily screamed and threw the nearest thing she could, a lamp, into the mirror. The crash was deafening, but the mirror didn't shatter. Instead, the reflection laughed. Her laugh, but distorted, as if it came from an old cassette tape, warping at the edges. "You can't stop it," it whispered. "You already let me in. And now," it pressed its hand fully against the glass. "You're coming here." Emily felt her body pull forward, her legs buckling. She clutched the door frame, but her hands were slick with something wet, black water dripping from her palms. The smell of soil and rust filled her nose. She turned to run, but every wall of her apartment now held a mirror. The fridge, the oven door, the black screen of her TV, the hallway light cover. And in every one her reflection smiled. They were all the same face, a face no longer hers. Voices whispered in unison from every direction. "Trade, trade, trade." She fell to the floor, gasping. Then the phone rang. The rotary phone. The one that had shattered days ago, but now sat, whole and perfect, on her living room floor. Ring, ring, ring. With trembling hands, she picked it up. Before she could speak, a voice, her own voice, answered, "Thank you." The lights came back on. The mirrors went dark. Emily was alone. Except, she wasn't. She turned slowly to the hallway mirror and saw her reflection still standing there, still smiling, lips curling into the final word, "Goodbye." Emily didn't remember falling asleep. But when she opened her eyes, it was morning. Birds chirped outside. Warm sunlight filtered through the curtains. Her apartment looked normal again. No black water, no strange reflections. The mirror was unbroken. The rotary phone gone. For a brief moment, she let herself believe it was over. She showered, made coffee, even hummed a tune she hadn't thought about in years. She sat at her kitchen table and stared at the sunlight dancing across the wood, breathing in the peace like it was real. But it wasn't, because when she reached for her coffee cup, her fingers didn't reflect in the window beside her. She froze, then slowly turned to face the mirror across the room. Her reflection wasn't there. The space was empty. She backed away, heart pounding. Then she ran to the bathroom, flipped on the light, stood in front of the mirror. Still nothing. No reflection, no shadow, no face. She wasn't in the mirror anymore, because something else was. Across town, Rachel sat on her couch staring at the message she just received. From Emily. A video. It was shaky, distorted. Just a glimpse of Emily in a dark hallway, speaking rapidly to the camera. "If you're seeing this, I didn't make it back," she whispered. "It got out. It used me to do it. Whatever you do, don't go into room 9B. Don't look in the mirror. Don't answer the phone." The screen flickered, then showed Emily's face again. Only her eyes were too wide, and her mouth hung open in a crooked grin. "Too late," she said. The video cut to black. Rachel dropped her phone. Behind her, in the TV screen, Emily's reflection stood perfectly still, smiling.